This week on the New to You show, Personal Obsession Part 2, Muscle, millions of unusually small creatures lurking everywhere. Welcome to the New to You show. I am one of your hosts, John Holt. With me this week,
Julian Cage.
Keith Vincent.
And back with us again for more abuse,
Eddy Vallante.
All right. So last week, Keith brought us the Sugar Cubes track Birthday. And this week, I'm going to bring you something under
About
our topic,
personal obsession.
Yeah. What are you obsessed with? Yeah, that's it. So this is a show where we bring you things that may not be new to the world, but maybe are new to you, and talk about it with each other.
We like to tell people, we like to make suggestions about things. People, there's a lot of media out there, people to wade through. Hopefully we can help a little bit.
Yeah, we're adding to the noise.
Just helping hands.
We're just more media to consume, so you know which media to consume.
Yeah.
And on that note, what's new to you this week, Keith?
Yeah, Keith, what do you got going on?
Recently, I would say within the last 2 weeks, I started watching this show called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and I think it's pretty swell. There's this lady, I don't know her name, which is, I don't do research, sadly, right now.
Well, it's like brand new,
Yeah, it's true. This lady was doing a lot of songs on the internet, most notably one that you guys might have heard. Who's the guy that did Fahrenheit?
Michael Moore.
What?
Close.
Ray Bradbury?
Ray Bradbury. So she did a song called "Fuck Me, Ray Bradbury." Maybe you guys have seen it, and it was a sensation on the internet. And she's really super talented and really funny. This lady, and she's got her own show. It's called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and it's I think it's a great show. Weirdly, it's a comedy on a network that's an hour long, and it's a musical.
Whoa!
Wow!
So some pretty big goals they set for themselves, but I think it's TV, so not every one of them's perfect, but there's some really good stuff in every episode. And this lady is really funny and goes for it. Like, she really commits to comedy. She's really good.
What's the premise?
I'm not giving anything away because it's all in the theme song, but this lady was a hot shot in New York, and she was about to become partner in the firm or whatever, but she just realized that she was really miserable all her life just working so hard. So she kind of remembered back to the last time she was truly happy, and it was with this boy she met at camp. At that moment, she runs into him on the street, and she thinks it's like kismet, and he's like, "Well, I'm moving back to California. Good luck here in New York." And so she kind of chases him to West Covina, California. Along the way, she's always having to tell people and herself, "Well, I'm not moving here because of him. I'm moving here to get a change, but he just also happens to be here." It's just there's a lot of funny, self-delusional stuff in it. It's great. I think it's way better than I ever thought it would be.
Yeah, it's way better than the Subway posters make it seem.
Yeah.
Mary and me watched the first couple episodes, and if this is the face of this generation of sitcom, it's a good start in terms of like the non-office style version. It's a lot of like, you get that, it's like the polished version of that Louis C.K. surrealist stuff too, where you just cut into these non sequiturs or instantly switch into a musical sequence or number. It's actually maybe more influenced by The Simpsons, or Family Guy would really be the closest equivalent, where those are sort of plays on traditional.
That's actually something I hadn't thought of, but yeah.
Traditional sitcoms turned animation, then those hyper self-referential things turn to pop culture referential with the Family Guy, and then in turn you get this thing where a live action sitcom character is following some of the same tropes with some modern comedy, and then cutting away to and into references, self-reference within her own past, and reference into
a lot
these
of like smash cuts and
or like she'll just kind of like turn to camera and it'll cut, and she's dressed completely different, and it's a Bugsy Berkeley musical number. Bugsy Malone.
Yeah.
I was listening to an edit before, and I called it Franz Kafka's "It's a Wonderful Life." But
it sounds like that formula would work well. I feel like I haven't watched a lot of episodes of The New Girl, but from my wife watches it, and from what I had seen, I was like, oh, the format of the show kind of works in similar ways as Family Guy, where you have these scenes and then like a smash cut to something.
Yeah, a lot of shotgunning of humor too.
Well, I would say that's actually a good comparison of to this show. I actually like New Girl a lot. As much as I can like a TV show, I really like that one. It's the same kind of humor and the same kind of setups in general. It's very self-deprecating, very cute lead female character, but willing to really put themselves in terrible situations for comedy.
Yeah.
But to do that for an hour sounds tough.
It's odd. The first time I watched it, it took me a little while before I was just like, wait, this is going on longer than it should have. But I liked it. It actually flows pretty well. I'm sure there's going to be a couple turkeys
carry
in
44
there.
minutes for,
exactly.
for that long with that sort of like the Family Guy stuff gets a little, it's exhausting to watch stuff that's rapid and that rapid pace, especially in animation that can be cut as quickly as
especially the first episode that I had seen, it was probably the one that kind of had the most rapid fire stuff. They kind of
that's the pilot that also has the most time dilation and just like boom, new sets, new set,
and there are flashbacks and then more flashbacks, so
that's also because the pilot, they have to set a lot of stuff up.
Absolutely.
It's good TV in an era when we're in great TV, so that's pretty good. It's
good TV in an era of great TV, but there's not really a lot of great comedies on right now. So it's a
lot of the ones that are
a good comedy
odder,
in an era of terrible comedies, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's borrowing from some of the really good ones like Louis and.
The Louis show doesn't. I love Louis C.K., but that show doesn't do an awful lot for me, and I would not at all call it much of a comedy. It's more of a really surreal thing than it is comedy.
He's creating like sort of like an episodic short film week to week.
Yeah, and some of them are funny, and some of them aren't, and it's just kind of its own. It's like a vignette almost.
Yeah, it's a collection of shorts.
Yeah,
but I think they're all funny.
Well,
I do too.
Tragic comedy.
I'm sure it's categorized as a comedy, but I don't. It's very rare that I laugh out loud at that show, and it's not that I don't like it. It's just I don't think it's it's not a comedy.
It's definitely it's not a gag a minute,
and it's a good experiment. What's that?
Yeah, it's not a gag a minute kind of thing. It's more maybe it's like your Woody Allen style.
Remember how Seinfeld would have the bookends where he's telling jokes on the stage?
Right.
In Louis, they have those, and sometimes that's the only funny parts.
Yeah.
Is him telling jokes on the stage, and it goes on to like a really sad thing about like his daughter getting picked on at school or something. Yeah.
But I think that's funny too. This I like that.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not trying to dog on the show.
No, you're just saying.
I'm just saying it's not. Just saying.
All right.
Anyway, that's we spent a long time talking about that. Anyway, so
check it out. That was Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
Maybe it's still on TV.
Yeah, I hope so.
This week I'll hop right into my pick for Personal Obsession.
Inside the mind, but inside the mind, viewing from a distance, everything appears fine, but inside the mind, but inside.
Invasion of the muscle things. They've come to drive America nuts. They're ugly, they're weird, they're tiny, they're terrible. And they're pink. There are hundreds of them. It's an epidemic. That's going crazy. Muscle things. Hundreds of different, I don't know what. They run in packs of 4, 10, or 28. Sold separately, new from Mattel. How many can you capture?
So Personal Obsession, I kind of factor it as something that you spend a lot of time thinking about, or that you gain pleasure in thinking about it, even if it's not always in the forefront of your mind. Even if you don't consume everything about it, you may consume news about it. Like even if you don't buy all the things, you might read about those things and be like, oh, that's neat, or oh, that's interesting. Like you keep your thumb on the pulse of that thing and are aware of it. You can go really deep with it, I think, and be like fully blindly obsessed. But
it can go deeper and deeper into obsession, yeah.
So my personal obsession is, again, this is kind of like yours last week, requires a little backstory. It's the 80s, so we're talking like near the end of the Cold War, maybe like mid 80s. And wrestling at the time, it was tough because you had these like Eastern Bloc countries who could just put money behind their wrestlers, like just big money. And in the States, nobody, these guys basically just had to not eat for a while to put money aside to really train and really get into the Olympics.
We've seen Foxcatcher. We know all about
that's what I'm bringing this week is Foxcatcher. The
You're
DuPont
so obsessed
family.
with Stephen Carell.
No, John DuPont was obsessed with his wrestlers, and it drove him mad.
He must have. Something did.
No, this is a different kind of wrestling. Actually, it's the 80s.
Yeah, but when you're referring to the Eastern Bloc, like you're pouring money into wrestling. Now, so when you say that, I'm imagining you're talking about like Olympic wrestling, right?
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah.
No, that is not my obsession. My obsession is.
I knew it wasn't your obsession. We got the email, but what I was wondering is how you were going to make that leap from that to
how before you destroyed my segue? Is that what you're trying to say? Before you torpedoed my?
Did I? I'm sorry. Did I use a finishing wrestler move on it to wrestle it down into submission?
I'm going to go back and mutually edit your segment so that we both get it.
Sorry. I didn't mean to derail you.
I don't know how I was going to say between that. There's no way.
But it was the 80s.
Yes,
it was the 80s.
So, and there was some Cold War stuff.
So there was Cold War, that which is somewhat unrelated for the most part.
Let's call it the Bush 1 administration.
Sure. So you've got wrestling, like WWF style wrestling was big.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly when those cartoons came out, like the Hulkster and that stuff. Was that in the like late 80s, early 90s?
I think it's like 87, 88, right around there.
But
rock and wrestling.
Leading up to that, you still had like, I would say that was, except for maybe today or the past like 10 years, that was probably the biggest point when WWF was at its peak.
I think it was definitely, I don't know if it was at its peak as far as viewership or whatever, but it was definitely at its peak as far as media penetration. Right. You had Glow on Saturday mornings, which isn't WWF, but it was wrestling. Captain Lou was all over everything on Cyndi Lauper videos, and Hulk Hogan was in Rocky movies, and so but still we're getting
we're
there.
Circling the drain.
Yeah, right.
Before we get deep into the
But
obsession.
anyway, I would say, right around then was like all kinds of wrestling.
All right.
Professional wrestling.
So it's 1985, and I'm 7 years old.
Oh, so it wasn't the Bush, it was still the Reagan administration.
Yeah, just the tail end, before that. So living in Oklahoma and going to like Tiger Scouts, which was like one of the
ranks of
Boy Scouts? pre Cub Scout. It was like Tiger Scout, Cub Scout, Boy Scouts. I think was so Tiger Scouts wear orange or something. And on the way to one of these like get-togethers at some kid's house, we stopped over at a toy store, probably a KB, maybe a Toys R Us, who knows. One of those two was big at the time. KB is long gone now. They've been toast for a while. But
sorry, millennials.
Yeah. So on the shelf I got a pack of Garbage Pail Kids and a pack of Muscles, the 4 in a pack, and that was
both of which made a huge impact on your life.
Oh yeah. So
like I want to play with the Kinnikuman, and I want to live my life as a garbage pail.
Hold on. So you said Muscles.
So Muscles. So on blue cardboard for $1 in a blister pack, you had these M.U.S.C.L.Es, millions of unusually small creatures lurking everywhere.
Is that what that stood for?
Yeah.
I
think that was an anagram.
I think they came up with a name, and then they were like, "What is this? What can we make this mean?"
Yeah.
So there are these like inch and a half tall pink semi-hard rubber wrestler toys
that were in one
kind of
pose.
like monster. Yeah, they would like be stiff pose. There's no articulation at all. They're small, and you could get 4 for $1, or a trash can full of them, 10 of them for $3, or a 28 pack for $7. Right? Or you could later on buy a wrestling ring for like $10. They had a belt, a championship belt that held some muscles, and you could send away for the poster. So that was the merchandise. And
now the poster had all the characters on it.
The 233 that were released in the U.S. were on this poster. So as a kid, you just get these pink toys, which in 86-ish, they started releasing multicolor versions of. So normally they would be this flesh colored, and then they started releasing packs that had 2 flesh and 2 of a different color, and then they had like 4 color packs from that point on. So you had maybe like 7 or 8 colors that they could be, and there were tons of them. They were collectible, they were weird, and the only story they gave was that there was the Cosmic Crunchers, which was the bad guys, with their leader Terri-Bull, which is this guy with like buffalo horns, bullhorns. And then there was Muscle Man, he was the leader of the Thug Busters, which was the good guy team. And he was the guy with the fin on his head. And that was it. Those were the 2 characters that they named and were on the package. And that was it. Like that was as much story as you ever got about these characters. And then they would just have these ads for the toys. Like, what are these things?
They were just mysterious.
That was the advertising. They're everywhere. There's tons of them. Get them all. They're weird.
Yeah,
and
I thought that was you shared those with us.
Yeah.
I thought that was a genius marketing move.
Yeah.
100%.
You just embrace how weird and absurd these things are.
And who knows what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that
That was a part of their advertising. Is just like, it could be anything. Who knows?
Yeah, and
Get them.
and that was like the ad. I feel like you could play that ad today and it would play. Like it was very like contemporary feeling.
It was
somehow.
like it wasn't. They kind of had like a broadcast journalist feel of like
Yeah.
them, like
Yeah, it was like a sports announcer, and they had all this black and white footage, and then the figures were the only thing colored, which made them feel, I guess, less pink. I don't know, or more colorful somehow.
And this is a precursor to like your Micro Machine Fast Talking too, who had a similar kind of vibe to it in his commercials. So these toys, that was it. Like, so from 85, 86 till 88, these toys were on the market and you could get them. They were, these little guys. And nowadays, like, you'll find them at garage sales or you'll find them here and there. And in fact,
Or at John Holt's house.
yeah. So I had like a few dozen of them when I was younger. And then later when I got older, I reconnected. I was like, I found a few more of these. Like, they're the kind of things that they're like perfect cubicle toys. You just you put them up. They don't take up much room. They're just there and they just hang out. And they're kind of odd little pieces.
Great conversation
Object
starters.
d'art or whatever. How's that work, Jules, in French?
Objet d'art.
Yeah, there you go.
Nice.
So there are tons of them, and I kind of reconnected at the turn of the century in the early aughts, pre 9/11, John, and collected up all. Like, I made sure I had all the 233 that were released in the U.S. officially that were on the poster. Now there's a 234th called Satan's Cross. That's what they refer to him as, who was in circulation but wasn't on the poster that you could get. So I have him.
They just didn't
And there are a
release
few-
him in America, or he was released in America. Just
He was released in America, but
never
officially.
in print and
Yeah.
never named.
So then, but there are a few that kind of leads me to the next thing. Where do these things actually come from? In '79, these 2 guys, they're actually young. I think they're in high school. A writer and comic artist pair created
In Japan
created a manga called Kinnikuman, Meat Muscle Man or whatever, Meat Movement Man, which is Muscle Man, and so it's move Muscle Man.
Let's repeat that for just to make sure. They made a comic book called Meat Muscle Man.
Or Muscle Meat Man, yeah.
Yeah,
But it's
okay.
Muscle Man.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
Kinnikuman, like moving meat. So they create this comic, and it's a parody spoof on superheroes and a parody spoof.
Mostly Ultraman. It's like a spoof on Ultraman.
And on wrestling.
Yeah.
So it's got sort of goofs on those, like on that early wrestling that was already like climbing towards its peak in the US, and that people were already
Well, you say
levelly
that, but
obsessed.
Japan professional wrestling was a big deal in Japan in the 80s. And in fact, I don't want to derail you, but like I heard an interview with Hulk Hogan not long ago, and apparently people would go in the 80s and train in Japan because their wrestlers were like way more hardcore.
Wow.
And like they would they would teach you all these like way more painful moves and way more like aerial stuff. All that was going on in Japan before it all came here.
Wow.
Yeah.
So these guys created this sort of joke comic based on that and made up all these crazy characters. And in 83, they made an animation of it, and that ran till 86. So that ran like 3 years, 137 episodes of this cartoon. And so Bandai had actually been making these things called Keshi, which is like a small toy made of more like eraser material that you would get. And they started that in like the early 70s, like mid to early 70s. And it's the kind of thing where if you had a coin, you just toss it in a machine, it's a gachapon or the quarter machine kind of thing where you just pop in a coin, turn it, and you get a little toy. And so you'd have these little collectible toys of various kinds, like Ultraman and
They were almost
Monsters.
the same size.
Yeah, and they had some variation within
Two-part
their
mold.
Keshis. Yeah, real simple. Like they'd have a whole tree, they'd print them on and just snip, and release them. And so then in 83, 84, they started releasing Kinkeshi, which were the Kinnikuman keshi, these little like rubber eraser sized toys, and they had some variable sizes.
The manga was popular enough that they made these really cheap toys.
It was the manga and then the anime.
The anime came out before the toys?
Around the same time as the toys. So they made loads of these toys. And in fact, over both the American run and the Japanese run ended toy-wise in 88. And by 88, there had been 419 Japanese Kinkeshi. So
but that's not 400 different characters. They're different poses.
Different poses and different and molds, yeah. So that's the other thing you'll see is within even the 233 that were released in the US, you'll have a dozen or more actual Kinnikuman, like the main character, but he'll be in different poses and different costumes and different looks. But so there's all this backstory. There's volumes and volumes of manga. There's volumes of show. There's all this stuff, but we never got an inkling of it. Yeah. They never gave us any of that. Here, even as a kid in the 80s, there's no way you'd know. And kids still have these toys around, and you'll find them, in, like I said, in garage sales. Like in the Slope, in Park Slope, there's a flea market, and a guy had a bin of them, and he was selling them for like $5 a piece. It's like, no, thank you, but great. That's great.
So just getting back to your obsession with them. So 1985, you're probably 5 or 6.
Yeah, like 6 or 7. And so
you buy the first Muscles and the first time you ever got Garbage Pail Kids. What was it about it that you were just like, oh man, this is my toy. I want to play. Do you remember anything about that?
Well, when I was younger, I mean, I didn't have tons and tons of them. I would definitely want to go back and get more. Part of it's the collectible aspect. Part of it's just that it was probably good that they didn't have any story to them. That it was all just you create what you want to do with them. You know that they're wrestlers, but even that wasn't super clear in the whole process. And there were weird ones, like ones that were, one of the classic ones is this claw that's got a little face on one of the fingers.
One hand.
It's like a hand.
And there's one guy that's like a pyramid.
Yeah, there's a pyramid guy. He's also takes the form of an arch.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't know this, but that's the same That's a bad guy called Sunshine who can shapeshift or whatever. But and actually the hand is also a shapeshifter character called like Sneaker Gator or something. He's a alligator lizard guy with like shoelaces on his chest. And, but yeah, so there were those toys, and I collected them up like sporadically and not trying to get all of them, but like get them when I could in the 80s till when we moved up to New England in 88.
So did you got the wrestling ring when they came out with that?
I had the wrestling ring, and I had the poster, and eventually I had the NES game that they put out, which was terrible.
Yeah.
But it was an NES game. We got the NES. I made sure to get it. They also had a board game called Muscle Memory Match or something, and it was this wrestling match tag team game where you just spun a spinner, and that decided whether you won or lost. And I had that game as well. It's pretty bad. When those weren't available anymore, except and I wasn't collecting them because they weren't available, and there was no eBay to access them at that point. There were other products that started coming out, like Monsters in My Pocket was a similar scale of toy that I gravitated towards to fill in that void.
So even then I don't know if this was because of if this was just the zeitgeist or if it was a reaction to the Muscles, but lots of toys came out at that time that was like that, like the Food Fighters.
Oh yeah,
they were just like toys of just different foods that are dressed up like military people.
Yeah, Army Ants was a
Army
great
Ants.
one.
Yep, there was what was another one? The little characters that were elementals, I think they're called, or what was
Battle Beasts.
Battle Beasts.
That was actually a Transformers spinoff.
Huh?
Yeah.
I think
in America it was, or just in Japan?
In Japan.
Wow.
I think part of the key is that you could mass produce it. They could be super cheap, so that kids could kind of use their pocket money and buy it themselves, or instead of just like saving up and getting one thing, they could just have like lots of little things.
One Transformer, you can get like 100 Muscles.
Right. Yeah. Eddie, did you have these toys when you were young?
I did. This is also new to me. And growing up in the mid to late 80s, that's when I was playing with toys. So I'm completely missed the radar, and I'm like I've been staring at them and they kind of look familiar. And I'm wondering if there was any cousins that might have had one or two of them, but I think it's somehow I missed it.
They were short-lived. They were in production for just a couple years. I mean, according, because I read the history that John shared with us, and they were only in production a couple of years. So I think. Yeah. But do you remember any of the other like spin-offs that or similar collectibles that?
No, I missed that too.
Yeah. I mean, I think I remember like a couple of them that you mentioned from the commercials, but I think for whatever reason these did not appeal to me, or and on all of it they're contemporaries. Like to me, I just looked at them and I was like, this is really lame. Well, I was like, this is weird and single colored and cheap looking, and why do I want this?
It does have an element of like it looks like unfinished.
Yeah, but, I mean now they kind of appeal to me now more than they would when I was a kid, because because they're weird, and also now I've seen the anime that they're based on, and I like the anime. It's very weird. I mean, also I'm an animator, and so I'm more tapped into character design and all that stuff. And these are just the strangest characters, even if when they are in finished form, they're just weird characters.
Yeah. And well, that's something. So we have a few in with us now, and but these are ones that were released. These are Japanese ones released in Japan, and they're larger. They're like 3.5 inch size.
So the actual collectibles
in the 80s they were about they were about like what would you say, inch and a half tall?
Inch and a half.
Yeah. So the real ones like have even less detail and are less playful.
They're pretty detailed for
their size, but like you really they don't feel very playable to me. They really just feel
they're indestructible. That was the key for me.
Here's a question for Julian and Eddie, considering you guys kind of missed this, which is easy to do in the 80s. I mean, there were so many toys, and there was always like the new toy coming out. Yeah. The new, not even the new toy, the new like run of toys. You know, they wouldn't just release a Centurion. It's like a whole set of like. Yeah. Did you collect the little army men, the little green army men with the little stands? See that I think that the muscles were kind of feeding off of that kind of thing, where it's just like these are really vague. You get to do whatever, you get to make up whatever story you want with them, and guess what? There's so many of them. Yeah. Right. And you're gonna keep buying these. You're gonna keep buying these packs because they would mix them up, right? So you would have one character that you don't have, but he's next to maybe two characters that are already there, and then you can just burn them, or you can chuck them with your slingshot, or you can set them on a fire on a boat.
I think those are the kind of generic toys that people would buy me, and I would gladly play with them, but they weren't the things that I wanted or that I lusted over.
And John, I feel like you kind of just spoke to this earlier too, that I caught on to Micro Machines, and so Micro Machines kind of feel like they're within that same sort of wheelhouse of like the cars are. I mean, they're you could create characters out of them, and there were so many, and then they were getting into planes and battleships and
they're smaller.
They're so small, but they had a lot of detail, and
they didn't have the same. Hot Wheels, the scale just going that much larger.
Well, Hot Wheels, they were like heavier,
and big metal,
and like metal, and they just felt a little more dangerous maybe to play with in some ways.
Is a good word.
You could also not have like the scale of play that you could have with like the reason why I think they went into Micro Machines. You could have battles and more stuff.
Yeah, and you could carry like 10 of them in your pocket, you know.
Right.
But I also think the smallness of them was like part of what made them neat, because they were just like you said, they were really tiny but very detailed, and still had wheels that moved and stuff, so you were just like, it just made him cooler. Like a mini tank was so much cooler.
Now I'm curious, John, if you sort of did the same thing as a kid, but like with Micro Machines, I remember and I would do the same thing with Legos. We had like a finished basement, and in my mind I kind of always knew where roads and buildings and houses were that didn't exist. So and like
all coming back to them.
It got to a point where I drew it on paper so that who came and played with me in the basement, they understood where everything was.
I don't know. You made the map finally.
That's awesome. I don't know, John, if you sort of were creating worlds with these.
Well, a lot of them, we did this. This is also then carried through with Army Ants, but near my house in Oklahoma, we had a creek, and we would go play under this bridge like little monster children. And we had, so there's like concrete. It was one of those things where it was like concrete that had been eroded as well by the water. So it's like they tried to, I don't know, pave over the creek for some reason, and it just ran through
Just
it.
probably to contain it for flooding.
Yeah. So we would hang out on this embankment right by the water and play with dinosaurs. And the muscle men for these plastic dinosaurs we had were a great scale. And and the way the dinosaurs, you could actually float them in the water by like semi-submerging them. So we'd play these like weird sort of more like nature-oriented battles between dinosaurs and these little pink guys. And then I know there was this alligator, and a bunch of people probably, you guys may have had this too, this like big plastic alligator that was like hollow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
if you stick your finger in the mouth, it kind of hurt because teeth.
Yeah.
You could scrape.
So there was one that had 3 muscle men stuck in it for years and years. And I think I finally exhumed them. Finally exhumed them from that guy, but
how'd you do it? Did it require surgery?
I think it took like some like needle nose or something to get it out. But we definitely, that was more nature. And we did crazy stuff. Like there was a junkyard further down. We would go and like make small fires and cook stuff. Yeah. Well, we would also, you also had to throw rocks at water moccasins and stuff. Yes. It was wild. It was nature preserve. No, but we mostly played outside. We'd also go into like drain, like the things that drain into the creek, the like waterways or whatever, basically like
gutters,
sewers.
Yeah.
Drain pipes.
We would crawl into those. And you were small
those
enough.
Those metal ones, yeah.
Yeah, and you just have a flashlight, and it was a truck flashlight, like it was shaped like a truck, and you go and play in the dark with the muscles in this like tube
that now you wouldn't even fit.
Yeah.
But so, what do you think carried the obsession over to adulthood? Is it like nostalgia, or is it the collectability? Because I feel like you have a lot of. This is one of many collections that you have.
I think so. I have a few collections. Like I collected like the Marvel cards. I collected those for a while.
Collected Magic cards.
I collected Magic cards to some degree. I stopped pretty early on with
the
that.
First time.
Yeah.
You had some full sets.
Yeah, that's different there. But it was easier then. They were cheaper back when I was younger. But so with these guys, it was like 2000, 2001. eBay was back. That was like a big, like that drives collectability for things. Like you have people putting stuff up on eBay and being like, oh, well now these are there. People were putting up more blogs and more like little small.
Well, did you find that it was almost like you had discovered this other world of the Kinnikuman that made you interested? You know, because we were studying animation, so you might, and we were watching a lot of anime, and it kind of makes me feel like we might have come across the muscle cartoons, and that might have like rekindled your
like Jules was saying about character design. Toy design is also something that I'm interested in because there's characters around it and it's IP driven merchandise. There's something interesting about that and the way those ideas are turned into physical objects and art. The opening of the rabbit hole was going through like, hey, I want to find out more about these toys I had when I was younger, some 12 years ago. And at that time in 2000. And so you go on to the internet, and now there are people who have websites that are, 1 or 2 years old and brand new websites where they're going on about their collections or going on about the history of these things. And you start to, through that, rekindle relearn about the things like, oh, well, this is the full, like when you're younger, you may have the poster, but you may not know the full scope of the toy line. If you didn't have the poster, you definitely didn't know the full scope of the toy line.
Well, then you were discovering there's a whole an entirely new scope in all the Japan stuff.
Right. So that was that like first kind of discovering the scope of the American toy set, and then further like, oh, there's this whole world, this whole story about it and behind these toys, and there are people who are more obsessed in that they've put together websites and they've rekindled and they've been collecting and they buy the stuff from Japan and have it all. From there, I just got on eBay, and they were cheaper now. They're more expensive to buy.
Do you think it had something to do with kind of I don't know if it was universal, but it was certainly in our circles a love affair with Japan? Like we were really, and I'm speaking not even just about us in our group, but I would imagine, a lot of geek media consumers at the time were like seeking out all these anime, all these, all these indie Japanese movies as well. I know I was listening to a lot of Japanese pop music too. Do you think it had anything to do with that?
Well, the question and argument there, well, all right. So that whole period of time, it's one of those like wag the dog situations where you don't know whether it was that they were getting a bigger market because of the internet and people were exploring more niche or more like more subject matter and getting deeper and getting access to these things through the availability of internet and downtime through internet usage. And that was increasing the market. Or if they were making better stuff and more interesting stuff. I think people finding it drove the market to be larger, which drove them to make better stuff. So you had...
Yeah, but at this point, they weren't making them, correct? This
no, there were...
all...
Well, like, this is... You're still... They're making, like, FLCL. You're starting to get...
Oh, no. Well, I'm talking about muscles.
Oh, not muscles. I guess I mean more, like, broader in terms of, like, Japanese culture being explored at the time. That there was... the market was growing for that, and the product to feed that market was growing. To the point where in 2010 or 11 they released a new set of Kinnikuman stuff, or a new series, Ultimate M.U.S.C.L.E Returns. But they had some GameCube games and they had some games leading up to the 29th anniversary, which is 2008. I don't know why they did a 29th anniversary, but I think that was part of the gag. But I remember
actually when the Ultimate M.U.S.C.L.E show came back on the air.
Yeah.
I believe it was 4Kids.
Yeah, they had it.
Time.
The thing was, this was a little bit before we got really heavy into the anime stuff, though.
Before 2000. No, I disagree.
Because we were big
2001.
Yeah, because I was into the anime stuff in high school, and
then
we already went to college.
but I mean like Berserk and that stuff I watched in college. Yeah. But like really got deep into it in like 2004, 2005.
Jules had Tetsuo Iron Man when we were in school, like the on VHS.
Yeah, but see, I guess I don't, because we were watching Akira and watching whatever was in like Vampire Hunter D and whatever was available in Blockbuster.
I think the difference was that it wasn't, and there was also like a lot of underground bootlegging, like you could get VHS tapes and stuff. But I think what he means is that there just wasn't as much available before that time. Like it really, once the internet really
the internet exploded it, but it was there. I mean,
but there were stores like you really had more people even bootlegging it because you had your Napsters.
Well,
and stuff
remember
like that.
Sci-Fi Network had a show on every Saturday morning that was an anime. Like they would play, I forget what it's called. Like Robot Circus was one of the first ones I had seen, where they would show some anime on Saturday.
Those were dubbed.
Yeah, they were
still
gross.
Yeah, well that's fine. I'm just saying that like. We were deep in art school into anime. And,
had more been available, we would have.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think I mean, I guess it's.
I think the only difference is we could actually afford and were capable of buying more of it after that.
I mean, it was
during the period that you're talking about.
Yeah, I guess what I mean too, though, is during that
muscles.
period, maybe there was more stuff, and I went pretty deep on that stuff, doing some research for shows and stuff. That I would laugh at how deep we like. I guess I don't see it as too deep because it was just part of like whatever anime I had access to, I was watching and I enjoyed that. But I really went deep on it in like 2004 when researching some of those shows we were
working on shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't count.
All right.
Because you're getting paid for it. You sold out, man.
So Keith, did you had any of these muscles?
Yeah, well, I don't remember ever buying them, but it was the sort of thing you just had. I don't like it's like I don't
I
know
think
if
it was
it's
the kind of thing you could nag your parents for because it was cheap.
Yeah, maybe.
Like,
I certainly was more obsessed with Garbage Pail Kids.
Yes.
I've certainly sought out every card I could get a hold of on that. And then when they came out with the little trash can candy toys with the little figurines, I went those.
Cool.
And they were reminiscent of the Muscles.
Yep.
Their figurines just one little piece of rubber. Yeah.
Cool. So bit of trivia. 10 packs of Muscles were garbage cans, little plastic garbage cans. And forever I thought those were like repurposed Garbage Pail Kid product or something like that. Like I didn't know what those were for. Turns out that in Japan, they had a thing where you could kind of like Play-Doh mold your own muscle man.
Oh, wow.
Like they give you a little mold and you like mold it. And the clay for that mold came in those trash cans. And so that's where the trash cans come into play for the product.
The Kinnikuman thing really, did you ever get into Pokemon? Because I feel like
I played the game.
That became the whole concept of gotta catch them all. That kind of like there's so many things. I feel like did it start with Muscles? Because I don't remember anything before that. That was just like these are just weird random things. You gotta get them. We don't even know what they all do.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I feel like that was when the first Pokemon were coming out. I feel felt like it was that way
I
as
think
well.
that started with collectible cards. Like baseball cards were the original, gotta have them all collectible.
Yeah, good point.
And then, and also I like when we were growing up, people were already collecting comic books.
Yeah.
You know, and
And ours was the era when like the McFarlane toys, like toys and stuff that they weren't toys, they were models.
they were collectibles.
And you would buy one in the box and one for display, and they were really poorly made.
I guess the Star Wars stuff was like that. They just kept coming out with like really obscure
but those were made to be
characters.
played with too a little bit. Like they were less
but
collectible.
those were the first ones where you heard about like, oh, so and so sold his TIE fighter from it was like $800.
But you heard about that like 10 years later when you were like, oh, why did I sell those at a yard sale for $2?
Why did I throw those down the stairs? Why did I let the dog eat Luke's other hand?
Right, so I've never been like a collector, and when I was a kid, I was ruthless. Like I would just like be really into something. I would like get a bunch of toys, and then literally a year later, I would sell them all and buy some other crap.
The next one.
Yeah, I would just cycle.
Well, I benefited from that because that was my cousins. My cousins would do that, and we would get their old toys that they were sick of. So it started off with like, oh, we got a bunch of their Star Wars stuff, and then it was like, then we got a bunch of their He-Man stuff. Then we got whatever that whatever the last one is, we ended up getting their He-Mans. We ended up Transformers. So we benefited from their wandering eyes.
What about you, Eddie? Did you collect toys, or do you collect?
I don't collect toys anymore, but I collected a lot growing up. A lot of Ghostbusters starting lineups.
Interesting. Ghostbusters.
Yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, yeah.
Beetlejuice. A lot of Batman and the various forms of Batman. I had Batman film, Batman the Animated Series, Batman Returns, Batman Forever. Yeah, a lot of action figures from all of those.
I don't remember Beetlejuice toys. Was it from the animated show?
Nope. They were from the movie.
Wow.
Like there was all different. I only had the ones that I only owned were just Beetlejuice. Like his different costume and wardrobe setups. The one
so
where
the one
he,
where
like, the
he has
circus
the hammers.
head.
Yeah.
And I had
One where he's a cowboy.
One where he's got the spikes coming out of his body when they go to pick him up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Feeling kind of anxious. If you know what I mean. Yeah.
I know I definitely played all my toys out. And so like now it's more collecting for the toys if I have them. So muscles I have a bunch of, tons of, and but I like the army ants we discussed before. I know we had a sand pit and I played with those and probably
And you
like,
lost all their butts.
boy, definitely all their squishy butts got lost. But I buried like 2/3 of them. Because they'd be like they dig in and then like eventually it'd be gone for the night. The tunnels I'd put them in collapsed and they're gone.
You were building structures.
Yeah, in the sand hole.
Yeah, and the neighborhood cat would poop all over.
Yeah, exactly.
them more.
And I get worms.
And then light it on fire.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, the thing we didn't really get into that I don't know if we have an awful lot of time to talk about, but the anime is really cute. Got to watch this, people. Watch the Kinnikuman anime from the 80s.
It's really funny.
There
it's
are
very
shows.
zany.
Yeah, zany is the key word. There are lots of shows out right now that are trying to be as quick and as surreal as that show was in 1980. What did you say it came out?
83.
83.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
It also has tons of pop culture references. A lot of them are Japanese.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch that are like American pop culture that you recognize. Like they make
Andre the Giant showed up. Yeah.
Yeah, and they make a joke on first encounter of the third kind or third encounter of the whatever.
Close encounter of the third
Close, yes, whatever. The Spielberg film. Yeah, and all kinds of gags like that. But it's just like weird and crazy. It goes from like slapstick comedy to serious action and back again.
And it has there's a lot of Japanese cultural signifiers in it, and I think that's why they didn't bother to translate it over.
Well, I mean, could you imagine trying to
But it also
translate that show?
I think it also just for kids wouldn't have passed the censors here. There was too much weird stuff, too much violence,
too many farts.
Yeah, too many farts, too many butts. There's a lot of butts.
A lot of butts.
That's where his secret tattoo is.
Yeah.
Anyway, though, it's a great show, and especially like by today's standards, I mean, this thing was way ahead of its time, Mike, as far as just creating a pace. The pace of that show was so quick, so much happening so quickly, and I'm not sure what its peers were at the time, but certainly that show. A lot of shows today are trying to be what that show was in 1983.
And for a wrestling show to not be like a Dragon Ball Z kind of thing, to have a fighting show where it's gags and humor and silly stuff, like I think it's a little more Dragon Balls to some degree, but more slapstick and more Dr. Slump.
And I feel like the reboot was more Dragon Ball Z. Like,
yeah, definitely.
A lot more emphasis on the action and the fighting, a lot less goofy stuff.
Yeah.
But Kinnikuman and Muscles. Thanks, Holt.
Would you guys watch more Go Buy the Toys now that you know about them?
Definitely will not buy the toys.
I'm going to be on the lookout for the toys.
Yeah, I won't buy them for $5, but if I see some dude throwing a bunch away, I'll be like, hey, let me give those to my friend.
Oh, I have plenty. More than enough. They're probably like a clump of them melted in my folks' attic.
Really, they did?
Well, no, I'm sure they may have. I'll have to go home and figure that out.
Oh man,
this
if
holiday.
they do, you got to take pictures of that. I want to see this like muscle like
I don't think
blob.
I think
muscle mass.
Yes.
Having tried to burn them like with direct flame, they are tough.
Yeah.
They are really hard to get.
Yep.
Get
I will
going.
say I have shot muscles with BB guns, and they don't leave a mark.
This is the thing.
Okay, scientists discover muscle things have come to wrestle. America's only host, the Battleman Belt, and the wrestling ring.
He moves left. He took one. Into the battle and belt it goes. He got another. Folks, this wrestling ring may save the world. One more to go. He's got him. His battle is belt. Oh, hard knocking rockin' ring. Battle and belt. Muscle figure pack. Each sold separately. New from Mattel.
Well, thanks guys for checking out my personal obsession.
Oh, my pleasure. Who
Thanks
we
for
got
sharing.
coming up next week?
So next week, Jules is going to bring his personal obsession to the table, and then we're going to have Eddie back again with us for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was the New to You show. You can find out more about Kinnikuman and the sugar cubes from last week on the website at newtoyoushow.com. There'll be links and pictures and all kinds of good stuff. You can find me, John Holtz, at Lord Joho on Twitter.
You can find me, Julian Cage, on Twitter at Beautiful Jules.
You can find me, Vincent, on Tumblr at earthlingkeith.tumblr.com. KeithVincent.tumblr.com. www.http.
Eddie, what about you? What
You can
they do?
find me at Eddy Vallante on Twitter and eddyvallante.tumblr.com.
All right. So thanks again, everybody. Tune in next week for more personal obsessions. It may not be new, but maybe it was new to you.
Life is all about the music. This pitiful life is all about the music.